when this topic came up about, or the series of topics, the idea for a History Matters session series, Kathy Webb approached me and said, I'd like for us to do something to kind of connect with the community, and just want to make sure you're okay with that. And many of you have been to more than just this session, and I hope that you've experienced what I have. It's more than just okay. It's important for us to know our history, and I feel like it's been a gift to me to learn the history of this new place that I call home and that I cherish for my family's home. So I am deeply grateful to the team. Okay, so I'd like to just acknowledge, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I don't want to steal Kathy's thunder for what she's planned for the entire evening in terms of recognizing and celebrating the people who have made this happen. But I do want to thank Sally Matheny. I want to thank Angel Ledbetter, certainly Kathy Webb, and Mr. Chivas Bradley, who served not only in an advisory role and a getting it done role and a presenter role in this, but who also has been very supportive of the college as a member of our Board of Trustees, and certainly very supportive of me as I joined the college. When we think about what we do here, our mission at Isothermal Community College, and I'm going to boil it down, and if you drive off of College Avenue onto ICC Loop Road, you see it when you get to the stop sign. The short version of our mission is to improve life through learning. And we don't ever stop learning. This series for me represents the best of our mission in serving the whole community and going beyond the classroom and reaching out into the community and making sure that we provide something for everyone, because this is the community's college. And so it gives me great pleasure to have witnessed the success of this series, to have seen you enjoy the opportunities to learn together about the community that we all love so much, certainly that I have come to love. When people say, "Are you from Rutherford County?" I say, "No, but I got here as fast as I could." So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please join me as we kick off. I'm going to pass it off to Sally Matheny, but I'd like to ask you to join me in thanking this team for this amazing opportunity to learn together.
Good evening. Before you hear tonight's presentation, we want to briefly reflect on the meat of the History Matters series, and that is the stories about the history of our region and the people who tell those stories. Numerous speakers helped us kick off our program with famous faces in local places. Some of the famous people we learned about were Smokey Burgess, Todd Coffey, Chuck McSwain, Rick Scott, Dr. Jack Hunt, and Merle Davis Umstead. Following that, we had presentations about the Holocaust by Carol Reynolds, the Revolutionary War by Chivas Bradley, and his comrades from the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association. Also, Chivas did a Q&A following a lecture on genealogy by Leah Brizendine. Other presentations included the Bostic Lincoln Center by Keith Price, the History of African American Women by Doris Crute, Textile Memories and the Rise and Fall of Textiles by Philip White and Terry Hines. In addition, we had 2 filmed interviews. One was with Walter Dalton and the other was with Jay Coombs. You can view these interviews and many of the other History Matters presentations by visiting the library's homepage on Isothermal's website, which is library.isothermal.edu. Correct? Okay. On behalf of ICC and the History Matters planning team, we wish to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their time and their stories with us. Now I'll turn it over to Angel.
Thank you, Sally. It has been our pleasure to work together to bring this series to you, the community, and that's who we'd like to thank next. You have been our audience, you've been our sounding board, and we appreciate every moment that you have joined us for this journey. We've been on quite a journey over the last 10 months. as we've heard from all the great speakers that Sally just mentioned. Each time, we all got a little closer to each other and a little closer to our community. As Dr. Annunziata said, Rutherford County is the place that we've all come to love, and that holds a very special place in our heart. And knowing that history and coming together as a community to learn it has been the most beautiful thing I think our committee has been able to see through this process. So we want to thank each one of you for joining us, not just tonight, but if you've joined us for any of the others as well. We want to give a special shout out to Miss Mary Oates, who has joined us for every session. She has been our biggest cheerleader, our biggest supporter, and that type of community love is what this organization and what this committee is all about. So if you wouldn't mind, we have a small gift for you. So we just want to say thank you to the community as a whole, but especially to you for supporting us every step of the way.
We've been doing this now for 9 months, and this is the last one during this semester, during this season. We'll start back in September, and we just wanted to say thank you to a lot of the people that we don't get a chance to recognize. So my portion is to thank Isothermal Community College and the people that work here. I thank all of you, and I'm grateful for you. But people don't realize, for us to be able to put this program on, and it's free, all 9 programs have been free for the community. We have a print shop that pales in comparison to no one. They do an outstanding job on everything that we call them and ask them, can you make me a poster? Can you make us a flyer? Can you do programs for, and unfortunately a lot of times I'm saying, can you do this tomorrow? They're always as good to us as they can possibly be, and I specifically want to recognize the print shop team, David Walker and Megan Young and Susan Straw for all they do, as well as the different departments here that help us. And I want to know if you're in law enforcement, please stand up. I want to thank all of you for everything you do. It's about you tonight, or this afternoon. It's about all of you. One of our other big supporters is Kathy Ackerman, who has attended almost every one of our programs, and we appreciate it. The advertising department with Mike Gavin and Devin Paul have to approve everything I do, and if you had to follow up behind me, you don't know how tough their job is. So they're greatly appreciated. But this is Law Enforcement Month, and we want Clint and Brian to come up here for just a minute, our resource officers here at the school. Thank you for everything you do. We appreciate you. And I'm going to turn it over to Chivis Bradley now, because he is the professional speaker in the group. Thank y'all again.
I'll start by recognizing the fact that he began his professional education at Isothermal Community College in the College Parallel Division. He then attended the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where he received a degree in political science. And after completing his degree, he returned to work here in the county from 1988 to 1993 with the Forest City Police Department, and served in many capacities there. Then he went in 1993 to the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office, and he advanced to the rank of lieutenant over the road patrol officers in that position. And during the time that he was there, he also served part-time as an instructor in the BLET program and in continuing education at Isothermal. If I were to mention all of his commendations and his credentials, it would take too much time really to do it, but in 1991 he was named the Region C Uniformed Officer of the Year. In 1992, he was received the North Carolina Governor's Award for bravery and heroism. And then in 2005, he was named the Region C Child Abuse Investigator of the Year. He holds a number of important certifications. He holds the Criminal Justice Instructor Certification, the Corporate Security Certification, the Advanced Law Enforcement Certification, and he has served since 2017 as the Director of the Basic Law Enforcement Training Program here at Isothermal Community College. And during his time in this position, he has conducted numerous professional development workshops for law enforcement officers across multiple disciplines and jurisdictions in North Carolina. Phillip lives in the Tanners Grove community in Rutherford County. His wife is Melinda. They have a daughter, Lacey, and 3 grandchildren. And we are pleased to have Phillip Bailey as our presenter tonight.
They asked me to give this talk, and as I got started, I said, sure, this is going to be, a short one. I hope I can get an hour out of it for the talk about it. But then I started looking into it, and I started getting the numbers, and I wound up with 13 officers. And there were officers that I didn't know anything about. There were agencies that I didn't know anything about, even though I was here as an officer for 30 years or more. And so we're going to talk about talk about all of the officers here as part of it. And I'll go ahead and say, if I missed anybody, please let me know. I have this terrible dream that while I was getting ready for this, that somebody's going to raise their hand and say, what about my great-grandpappy? And I didn't know anything about that one. But I'm trying to get all the information that I could on these. And like I said, I found, or the people that assisted me, we found one officer that has not listed in the down officer memorial page. And we're sending the information about him because we found a newspaper article about a death. But the first one is Constable John Landrum Green. Now, the office of constable is something we don't hear about here. But we had constables all the way up until the 60s. And the constables actually worked for the justice of peace that we don't have anymore, but they got rid of those in the 60s. And the constables were elected or presided over their voting precinct. So you would have constables at different places, and they were separate from the sheriff's department. The sheriff's departments came over from England when they had started the colonies, and the office of constable came over. And the office of constable stayed in until the 60s. And Constable Green, his end of watch, the last day when he died, was Sunday, March 13th, 1898. Now, Constable Green, you think about the 1800s, 1890s. The Civil War had ended. Everybody's running out west, but he stayed. He's on horseback. There's no radios, no communication or anything else. Just one man out there working. When you think of the marshals out west, he was here in Rutherford County. He actually fought in the Civil War for 4 years, was wounded, went home, got better, and showed back up in the Civil War. He was in the 28th Regiment of the Cleveland Regulators, and he finally surrendered the last day of the Civil War. He came back and became a constable for the rest of his life. And on March the 13th, 1898, he goes to Henrietta at night to break up basically a fight. There was a large crowd of people there, and some of you came to the one last week or last month about the meals and talk about Henrietta. Remember, it didn't start. Henrietta didn't exist until they started the mill, and this is just a few years after the mill started. So he goes to the crowd, and the man that was causing the problem had escaped from jail 6 years prior to that, Blakely. He was a former slave. He escaped from jail for horse theft. He had been causing problems for a number of times, for years. They had not found him yet. And he had made threats saying that he was going to kill the jailer that had kept him in jail. They had warrants on him from Cowpen, South Carolina, where he had beat up his wife. And he had made threats he was going to go kill his wife. So Constable Green shows up with several other ones. Blakely pulls a pistol and shoots Constable Green one time. Constable Green returns fire 3 shots and kills Blakely. And Mr. Green dies about an hour later. That's our first one that we have. This is a newspaper article that they had about that particular incident. Deputy Sheriff L.C. Hilton. This is Polk County. So we're covering both of them, and we're just going by the start at the beginning and work our way up, so we'll jump back and forth between the counties. Deputy Hilton worked for Polk County Sheriff's Department, and on March 26, 1905, he had arrested a 19-year-old man, for carrying a concealed weapon. Now, as we go through these, I want you to listen to the calls that the officers were going to. And every one of them, the Sheriff's Department or Police Department right now could be going on them. They're nothing, things, you're not looking for terrorists or bank robbers or something like that. These are everyday calls. He arrests a man for carrying a concealed weapon. So they take the man to the magistrate's office, and somewhere during the process of the magistrate's office, the suspect runs out the door, and Deputy Hilton goes chasing after him, and the man turns around and fires a shot and hits the deputy in the head and kills him. His family, the suspect's family, lived in the Landrum area, and this was apparently close to Tron. He runs off and hides. They eventually find him, and he's arrested. He gets convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 14 years in prison, and starts it in October 1905. He was pardoned by the governor, William Kitchen, in 1912 for health reasons, and then he disappears into history. They had a newspaper article about the killing, and they had a manhunt for a time period before they was able to locate the suspect. The next one is Rural Police Officer James Reuben Lee. And this is where it gets to the point where I didn't know anything about Rutherford County Rural Police. I just didn't know about it. So I asked Charles Wiggins here that works for the library and did some research. He's done an outstanding job for me. He finds all kind of stuff. He finds some information about the rural police. So if you'll give me a little bit and I'll explain that. The Sheriff's Department works in the rural areas. The city police works inside their jurisdiction. Well, the late 1900s, traffic started becoming a big issue. Sheriff's Department traditionally doesn't work traffic, but there's all traffic problems. The Highway Patrol didn't start till 1929, so there was nobody. The legislators in 1919 enacted, for at least for Rutherford County, but for other counties, where you could hire at least 2 police officers and become rural police officers. They worked for the county commissioners. They got hired in by them every year. They collected fees and services. They could do everything the Sheriff's Department could do by serving civil papers and warrants and papers. But the fees that they got off of that went to the school board and also for the operation of the organization. In 1921, they upped it and allowed them to have some more of those, and the city could kick money in to have the police officers the rural police officer augment their area. So that's what the rural police was, and the rural police sort of went away in the late 20s. Well, James Reuben Lee, and one of the things that they was really working on is he died in August 26, 1923. What happened in the 1920s? Prohibition. So alcohol was a big problem. And one of the things that they had about the rural police was that they could not partake in strong drink. They could be fired for those reasons. And they also wanted to work traffic. Well, James Reuben Lee was up near Esmeralda Inn, and he comes across two gentlemen that were drinking. He confronts them and attempts to arrest them, and one pulls a pistol and shoots Officer Lee, and the bullet travels through him and hits the other suspect in the leg. They run off. Officer Lee dies at the hospital. Nobody really knows what's going on, but lo and behold, here comes the guy showing up with a bullet hole in his leg, and they was able to track those down. And the suspect that shot Officer Lee was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. Now, this is the gentleman that I found, Charles Wiggins found some newspaper articles, and I was reading through them, and we found this officer that we didn't seem to know about. His Clyde Morrow. He died May 26, 1925. So this is only a couple of years out, 1923, now 1925, less than 2 years time period, for an organization that probably has 2, maybe 3 people in the organization. So that's a pretty good hit. Officer Morrow was riding a motorcycle. That was his patrol vehicle, riding a motorcycle between Rutherford and Forest City and Harris Oil Company. I don't seem to know where Harris Oil Company is, but for some reason I didn't say it was Spindale, so I'm assuming that it was somewhere in that area. And a truck pulls out from Harris Oil Company and pulls out in front of him while he's on the motorcycle. And he loses control, falls off the motorcycle, and breaks his back. And he dies pretty much at the scene. The odd thing about this right here is that happened on a Tuesday. The Saturday before that, another rural policeman in Rutherford County had a motorcycle wreck and had got serious head injuries from it. And they had interviewed Morrow, and Morrow on that Saturday had said, well, these motorcycles are dangerous. I had somebody knock me off of it Friday, and I've already had a wreck today on it. And then several days later, he's dead from a motorcycle wreck from somebody pulls in front of it. The widow of Mr. Morrow sued the oil company, and from what I could tell, apparently she did not win the lawsuit on that. Nobody was charged out of it. It was an accident. And he's buried at Providence Methodist Church in Chase Community. And that's where we get the traffic officer Morrow killed in an accident. I contacted the Downed Officers Memorial page about Mr. Morrow, and I'm sending additional information to see whether or not he fits the criteria of officers killed. We don't have any other information about him. Going into the Forest City Police Department, Saturday, June 6, 1931. So we went from 25, now we're in 1931. And it says patrol officer, but also I believe he was actually the chief of police. They have him listed in the newspaper on the death as Chief Austin Amos Price. Mr. Price was arresting a man for public drunk and was walking him back to the town hall. The police department and the town hall were all sort of together. He was walking him back there, and the drunk man pulls a knife and stabs Mr. Price several times, and then takes Officer Price's gun and shoots him 5 times while he's laying on the ground. He also shoots himself when he does this and hits himself in the leg. And so he was not able to run away, and the town folks of Forest City catches him. He was sentenced to death and sentenced to prison. He was released after completing his sentence. Don't know what he was actually convicted of or how long he served, but he was convicted and served his time. Right here, the day or so after he was killed, and have it listed as the chief of police instead of a police officer. Then, October 7th, 1939, which is a Saturday, Patrol Officer Roy Eugene Watkins of the Forest City Police Department. He had only been on the duty for 3 years. He got dispatched to a call about a domestic. Him and another officer walked up to the house, which is over in the South Broadway, greasy corner area, what they call, in that area over there. As he's walking up at night, the suspect fires a shot with a 12-gauge shotgun and fatally wounds Officer Watkins. Officer Watkins, before he dies, he returns fire, apparently does not hit the suspect. The other officer returns fire. The suspect runs off. He runs off out through the town, out heading south, and one of the neighbors hears all this, and he goes outside with his shotgun loaded with birdshot, and he shoots the suspect, but does not injure him very much. But he runs on off into the Alexander Mill area, and at a time period all night long, about 500 people gathered to try to locate him, and eventually, after firing shots at him all night long, he eventually gives up. He was convicted of first-degree murder, and he was executed in the gas chamber on June 14th, 1940. This is the plaque that the town of Forest City has inside their lobby. If you go in, they have the plaque of the two officers that we have. Now, another little aside. When people think of dangerous times, a lot of people don't think of the 30s and the 20s. But this newspaper article pulled up from 1938, the start of 1938 to June of 1940, 2.5 years. 24 police officers were killed in line of duty, and only one of them was a traffic accident. All of them was felonious assaults. So that's a ratio of 4 officers killed for every 5 months and during that time period. Now we go from 1939. We have a time period that we might Sunday, July 2nd, 1972. And Trooper Clyde Stephen Perry, Trooper Perry, worked for the Highway Patrol in Polk County. He had just came to Polk County. He had been a trooper for 5 years, but he'd been transferred over to Polk County. And he lost control of his vehicle during a high-speed pursuit near Columbus at 10 a.m. in the morning. So Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And he succumbed after hitting a tree, he was transported to St. Luke's Hospital, where he died of his injuries later that evening. 2 people were charged with his death, but I never found the results whether or not just charged or whether he was convicted of the death. There were some questions that maybe somebody else was involved in it. On August 2000, a portion of Fox Mountain Road was renamed the C.S. Perry Memorial Bridge. He was age 28. He had only served for 5 years. So we go from 1972, and now the chief of police of Saluda. Saluda is a very small town. Don't know how many they had officers at the time, but probably 1 or 2 officers at that time. Friday, September 3rd, 1976, Chief Williams responded to a domestic on Ozone Drive between I-26 and Saluda. As he walked up on the steps of the porch, the suspect fired a shotgun through the screen door, killing Chief Williams. The man was apprehended at the scene by other officers. The chief had served 7 years in law enforcement. The suspect was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2004. But we have this newspaper article, and since we're getting closer to where we'll pull things up, this newspaper article is rather unusual. I'll get our people's way. The man in the middle is the suspect charged with killing the chief of police. And these are the sheriff's deputies that are leading him to his trial, while everybody smokes cigarettes as they walk. Now, the officer right here is Sam Williams. Sam Williams, I worked with him most of my career. He had been asked by Chief Williams to come to work at the Saluda Police Department. And Sam said, I can't, I'm too young. I'm not old enough to become a chief, to go to work at the police department. So he goes to work at the sheriff's department as a jailer, which they allowed to go in. And so he's leading him across this part here. The town actually, and others actually had a memorial, and this right here is right outside the police department, right across the street at the town of Saluda, a bench for him. Now, we're getting to the one that a lot of people know about. Tuesday, May 30th, 1st, 1979. Captain Roy Husky is dispatched to a dispatch to a domestic in above Rutherford area. Captain Husky pulls into the drive, and Roy Hutchins fires a single shot from the house and it strikes Captain Husky in the head, killing him instantly. Deputy Willard Messerschmitt, they try to call him on the radio and they can't get any answers. So Messerschmitt drives over to check on him. As he pulls into the driveway, he sees the shooting that happened and starts backing up, and he gets a single shot through the windshield and kills him then. He had made a garbled radio transmission, and people were trying to figure out what it was before he was killed. So Trooper Peterson was working up near McDowell County, and he hears another trooper talking, saying, "Have you heard this right here? The radios wasn't compatible." So he says, "No," and he tries to relay it, several hands through there, saying there's something really big going on in Rutherford County. He said, so he starts working his way down. He passes a speeder. What does the Highway Patrol do? They go after speeders. So he turns around on the speeder, not knowing this was the suspect. And the man turned off several roads, or turned off a road, and the last radio transmission they have from Peterson, Trooper Peterson, is that he's jumped out and ran. And an officer arrives at the scene and finds that Trooper Peterson had been shot in the head. He had fired one shot with his pistol, and then they had a manhunt. And the manhunt went on for quite some time. At one time, it said it was the largest manhunt in North Carolina. And the suspect turns out, gets caught. The suspect was an Air Force veteran who they had many run-ins with him. He had also been charged with manslaughter in the Air Force. He comes here and has some problems. they capture him and find him guilty, and he was executed for the killing of the different officers. The 3 officers is apprehended, convicted of capital murder, and executed in 1984. Trooper Peterson, the Highway Patrol, in 2016, named their physical training field and running track of their training agency in Raleigh the Peterson Field in honor of Trooper Peterson. In Rutherford County, we have a memorial. This was a newspaper article or a magazine article about it. They have a memorial in town of Forest City, right in the Squire area. They've named the bridges for Roy Husky, Pete Peterson, and Owen Messerschmitt on the 74 corridor. Our next one is Probation Unit Supervisor William Vance Lee, also known as Bill Lee. His last day of watch was Monday, September 11th, 1989. Mr. Lee was killed in a traffic accident on ICC Boulevard, one lot down from here. He had a flat tire on his patrol vehicle, pulled off the side of the road, and a lady was driving and had her kids, and she got distracted, turned and looked back at them, drifted off the road, and hit him while he was changing the tire. Bill, they have started a scholarship for him, and it's called the William V. Lee Memorial Scholarship here at Isothermal. It was started in 1990, and it was started for criminal justice majors of Isothermal Community College. And our last one. Trooper John Horton, Monday, January 3rd, 2022. Trooper Horton stopped doing a traffic stop at the intersection of High Shoals Church Road and Goods Grove Church Road near the Cleveland, Rutherford County area, in the 6 Point area. He called for some assistance because he's having some trouble arresting this gentleman who had some warrants on him. And his brother, who's a trooper, heard it and came to his assistance. And it had been raining, snowing and sleeting during that day. As he topped the hill and crossed, went around the curve, he lost control and struck the patrol vehicle, and it killed both Trooper Horton and the suspect. Trooper Horton served for 15 years. He was survived by his wife, 6 children, parents, sisters, and 2 brothers. A little bit about a ICC student in the 80s, and I'm hoping not to mess up her name, Laura Lagar. Laura Lagar was taking classes here for broadcasting, and she did one of her projects, an hour-long documentary about the Roy Husky, Messerschmitt, and Peterson's death. And she interviewed a lot of people that was involved in it. A lot of officers and chiefs of police and sheriffs, a lot of neighbors. They reenacted a lot of the parts. It was amazing what she did for the 80s. And it's the 1980s. She has the fire faucet hair and the shoulder pads. If you've not seen this, you need to go back and remember the 1980s. But it's on YouTube, and it's listed as the In the Line of Duty, Rutherford County, 1979, if you want to watch it. It is an interesting documentary that covers a lot of information of the people that was involved in this. The other place that I got a lot of information from was the Officer Down Memorial page, and that's the link, odmp.org. Has a lot of information about officers all over the United States, but you can pick down to North Carolina, and you can start picking the different departments if you want to see other additional information. Now, the one thing that I would like to say is that this was a lot of looking into it, and I wouldn't say it's enjoyable, but I learned a lot from this. But it was a lot of moving little parts and stuff, and I found out about 3 officers that I did not know about. There is no one place that they have a memorial for all the officers from the 2 counties. Each department has their own, which is obviously, but the rural police no longer exist, and the constables no longer exist. And I would like to see us have one place. Okay. That is my presentation. I hope it's not enjoyable. I hope you got something from this, and I hope I got everybody for this part. Thank you. American, this is it.
We overloaded Philip's brain. He was supposed to introduce our sheriff. So I'd like to introduce our sheriff, Aaron Ellenberg, now.
That was awesome, Director Bailey. Several of these, I grew up here in the county my whole life, and I always heard some of these stories, but I had no idea of the early or late 1800s and early 20s. So very interesting. Pleasure to be part of law enforcement here in Rutherford County. ICC, I'm a graduate here of the basic law enforcement training, and it's grown so much. I appreciate Director Bailey, what he's done for the program here, and adding retired Chris Francis here to the staff. We're blessed. We're producing great law enforcement out of ICC here. And as you know, it's hard to recruit law enforcement this day and time, what we're facing. And we're getting outstanding officers, and I appreciate what y'all are doing. Director Bailey, the resources and everything he offers here at ICC it's wonderful, because this day and time, we can't take things for granted. And when he comes in there, I'm an instructor here also for the program, and he comes in there and giving the information that he does to these students and show that he cares day in, day out for these students to succeed, where hopefully we don't experience what these situations were in life. Anyways, also I'm here to actually, behalf of the History Matters group, they've asked me to speak, and I just want to thank my school resource officers. We got 20-something schools through Rutherford County, and I hear nothing but positive comments throughout Rutherford County with our resource officers, and they just want to recognize one here today that's went over and beyond the call of duty for them, and got a little token appreciation. Corporal Clint Tuttle.
Hello, I'm Charles Wiggins, Director of Library Services here at the college. I want to thank you all for coming, and I want a special round of applause for Kathy Webb. As Dr. Annunziata mentioned at the beginning of this entire History Matters project and series was her brainchild. She put a lot of energy into this, and she would be the first to say that she has had a lot of help, but this would not have happened without her hard work and also the support of her loving husband, Ken. And so we should thank both of them. We're happy to be able to bring this to the community, and we are hoping to continue this into the fall. So keep your eyes on the library website, library.isothermal.edu, for upcoming events beginning in September. Thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful summer, and we hope to see you back in the fall.